Margerison.
I'm never sure how to say his name either, so I just got Sam. Okay, thank you for attending. So we want to get through this quite quickly because there's always loads of questions, and the questions are more interesting than the slides, I would say.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yes, I'm Ian Forrester, and this is Sam.
Sam Margerison. Hello, thanks for having me.
Okay, so yes, warning: there is death. Death lies ahead for all of us. So, what would you do if you died today? And this is a serious question. You know, I know most people don't think about it, but we really need to think about it more. Okay. There is something about kind of we live well, we try and live well, but we never think about like dying well. How do we die well? How does that work in the digital age? I have a question for you all. So yeah, digital diagnosis. So you know, things have changed in the internet age, and I want to ask a question. Also ask this question: what people that died? You know, are they people who have contacts in your contact book? What do you do with those contacts? You know, I'm gonna do a quick poll. So, how many of you or people that have died, you leave the contact as it is? Hands up. Wow, that's most people. Anyone that doesn't do anything, I mean, I'm just wondering what they do. They just delete it, or do they? Okay, so some people, yeah, maybe. I'm interested because like it's a very simple thing, but no one really has a solution, and I'm always really interested in what people do. So that's just a real simple kind of, and so there's lots of ways to be kind of remembered and how death can expire and happen in the age. And you know, we see stuff like I hate the Facebook pages. There's also some really kind of weird technical solutions where people put in QR codes on their tombstones. I have thoughts about that, but you know, I'm sure you probably have thoughts as well. So you know, the question is always like, what would you want to do? Think about all the things that are in your life, and we'll explore that a bit more with Sam. You know, kind of imagine if your wishes, could actually have your legacy. Something to think about. I will go into more depth about the wishes in a minute. So, how many of you got wills? Hands up. Has anyone not got a will? Please, I would swear, sorry, get a will. I know everyone's like, I haven't got a house, I haven't got this, get a will. Really, and the government does a really good job actually making wills pretty cheap or even free. There's even, I think in November is the free will month, so just get a will. Something very simple. You can change it over time. It's not like you set it and that's it. So there's a thing about the will, is that the will's a legal document. There's also a thing called a letter of wishes. Because we're in a common law country, then we do have actually these letter of wishes. And so these are the differences between them. And you can see that one's very legal. This is the stuff that people think about a lot. You know, like this is stuff that you put your house in, you put your kind of inheritance in. But it's other stuff that's like more flexible and and can be much more interesting. You can put stuff like, I want to give my favorite plant pot to my niece because she's always loved it, and stuff like that. Or you could do almost anything. So this is the area that we're really interested in because that usually gets ignored. It's just like it's an afterthought. So I remember emailing, I won't say which one, but one of the funeral homes, and asked them about the wishes, and they said, well, we would get people to write it down, and then they would just forget about it. They don't really do anything about it. This is kind of really interesting to us. So, the first thing is always do not put sensitive information in your wills, and you will see why. And a lot of people kind of go, "Oh, just put everything in the will." Not a good idea. So the will becomes public. once it's kind of ratified and you are definitely dead and stuff like that, it becomes a public document. People have put in their will their Bitcoin seed phrase and other, like loads of passwords and all those kind of things. Generally, most lawyers will advise you not to, but if you write your own, people don't necessarily know how to do this. So they kind of write everything in the will, thinking the will has everything. That's a public document. And I hadn't realized that until I started looking into this. There's a whole show from the BBC. I used to work for the BBC, called Grave Robbers, where literally people are literally looking through this thing called, I can't pronounce it, Bonaventura. I'm not sure how you say it, but it's a freely accessible thing that you can look through and see all the people that have died and what their wills are. So you could literally go through there, or you could grab that and pull out all the things that look like Bitcoin seed phrases or passwords, and then you could use that. So this is the stuff that you should be definitely putting in the letter of wishes, not a public document. Only people who see that are the people who are described, who are your executors. So the people who are named are the people that see that. No one else sees that. And yes, there are some really bad examples where people have tried to basically falsify a will. This is why I say get a will, have something. Don't just leave it to chance. People will, and there's lots of scams where people are trying to falsify that they have a will, or they were written into a will that they suddenly produced. So do get a will. So I'm interested in letter of wishes, and this is where our project kind of sits. So you can put almost anything into the letter of wishes, literally anything. My favorite dishcloth, I don't know, my sourdough starter is get given to a certain person, and it's a thing that you can write yourself. It doesn't have to be kind of done through a solicitor. The other thing about it is that the people who are named in the will, executors, could ignore some of this. You choose people that are kind of know you enough to go, that cup's actually gone, or the person that you're going to donate that to is no longer here, so we're going to do this instead. Stuff like that. It's more like a sentiment of what you want. So, it's not, you cannot put anything legally binding or demanding in there. Doesn't count. But it allows you to express your wishes, which is probably more important than you must do this. So this is kind of like an example I just pulled of a template. And it started thinking, there's some stuff, I did see that Authy app. I'm trying to avoid Authy right now. I'm trying to get away from it. Reasons that I'll save. But there's lots of these type of things that exist, and it's very kind of like loose. And there's a lot more that could be done there. And so I started thinking, well, what else could be done, and could we do something with that? The other interesting part about all of this is that you might have done everything right, but these things do have a habit of biting you in the backside. And so the things that you're requesting may not be possible. So a lot of the things is like, all my photos are on Google Photos. I want them all pulled down, I want these photos pulled down. And then your executors go to do that, and it's a problem because they haven't got access to the Google Photos account. Because you've put your passwords in a vault, they may have access to that vault. But what tends to happen also is that a lot of the cloud providers will then do things like they'll use their end user license agreement against you. So some have like legacy contact. Dropbox just recently did this. There's a famous case where Dropbox wouldn't allow access to someone, even though they had the death certificate, because they felt that that person was potentially attacking, attacking is probably the best word, attacking Dropbox. they were doing things that they shouldn't have been doing, or as far as they were concerned. And they have the right, because you've signed the end user license agreement, to do that. So you want some kind of control. You want to be able to pull that stuff down. You want to do that. You want to make it as easy as possible, because bear in mind, the executors are doing this all in the middle of grief. So it's not like they're just going ahead and going, oh yeah, I'm going to do this thing. It's like they're dealing with a funeral. They're dealing with like all these other things. So this is where we kind of got to. We started thinking, well, imagine if there was a machine readable wishes, and imagine if you could execute that. And this is where Sam comes in.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, all the issues that we've just talked about are going to become so much more prominent, more necessary to deal with, as a lot of our assets will become digitized. And, every aspect of your digital life, both private and public, will continue to exist after you pass. And I can guarantee, maybe, I don't know about for this crowd, but most of us don't have protocols in place for unexpected events. And I mean, I don't really blame us, because tools are really scattered and it's complicated and it feels like something that's not really worth our time right now. But I guarantee that it will be in the future. Yeah, Ian and I found it really crazy that there isn't really something that's like prominent and substantial, whether you're technically in tune or not, to actually wrap up your digital life and leave what you want before becoming permanently AFK. So I want everyone to actually think about this, do a quick mental audit. How many accounts do you actually own right now? And I'm not just talking about the active ones. I mean everything. I mean the platforms that you've given information to, any cloud service that's storing something on your behalf, every subscription. I mean, for most people, it's going to be an impossible task, because there's so much stuff. We've accumulated 2 to 3 decades worth of digital footprint that has no infrastructure, and there's no protocols there for when we're not around to control it. I mean, it's almost impossible, and that's the first issue. So let's get specific. I mean, there's a couple of them up there. Photos and media, the collections and family albums that you might own are probably under one account, under one credential, one set of passwords, and when that person's gone, the access doesn't automatically transfer. We own more media than any other generation ever, and it's stored in the least legacy-friendly ways imaginable. Let's take it further. Broking accounts, online banks, platform credits, NFTs. Wow, that went downhill. Yeah, doubt it. But yeah, these digital assets have no recovery path, often no instruction set for when someone needs to take control, and there's just an assumption that it'll get figured out, which most of the time it doesn't. Subscriptions, initially they're low stakes, but when someone goes, a sea of $4.99 a month will swallow a bank account, and it's kind of something that needs to be dealt with, and it's not something you want to put on someone when they're already going through something that's very difficult. And that doesn't really constitute and take into account any personal projects that you're doing, things that are unfinished or still need publishing. That stuff just goes. So that also begs the question of how much of this stuff do you actually own? And obviously the answer is legally less than you'd like to believe. As you know, when we agree to the terms and conditions of a service, we're not gaining ownership, we're just gaining a license to use it. And you get a license to the account, and it's revocable, it's non-transferable, and it's under a platform's terms. And you don't own your archives, you don't own your cloud photos, you have permission to use them unless you're self-hosted. There's a lot of asterisks in this talk, unless you're self-hosted.
There are some issues with that though, but
yeah, exactly. And this distinction, particularly for these large companies, really matters when you're considering what happens after passing. When someone dies, the license will often die with them. And I'm not really sure what compelled me to design this slide, but luckily for us, the GDPR can give some people in the UK and Europe a little bit of insight into what's going on. Obviously, the last talk briefly mentioned issues of that, but for example, you can use a subject access A request to basically compel a company to hand over everything they have on you, and most people haven't used it. It's worth doing just because it's not just an exercise in digital estate planning, but also just to get an understanding of your exposure, like where your data is, what it is. And so the second thing, which doesn't really apply to us really in the UK, but in Europe, for the lucky ones, we have something called the right to erasure and the right to be forgotten, which is just a request of deletion of data, which also has its exceptions, but companies are obligated to comply. What doesn't really exist yet, and which is why I put this strange image on, is at least not cleanly or publicly, is a legal mechanism to deny data from being used in AI training. And as of now, if a platform's terms permit training on your data, then that doesn't change after you pass. There's no standardized opt-out that survives you, and that's really the gap in the current framework that we've seen, and it's one that's really going to be harder to ignore as the value of our data increases. But there are some things that you can do and things that we can decide whilst we're still around to decide them. And that's kind of what we've been working towards and building. So the core idea of the system that we're trying to develop is pretty simple. You just define what you want to happen, and our software will package it into a set of instructions and an automation workflow using a tool called NAN, which will actually carry it out. So, I've been working on this UI, but obviously, we want developing, but I want the UI to actually make people think about this sort of stuff, to prompt people to think about their digital assets in relation to their digital legacy. And users can simply create wishes, and these wishes are able to do a set number of things right now, like move a file locally or send emails. And these wishes are objects, saved, named things with a history, and they exist on your computer. They're editable and they're dry runnable. A user of the system would basically accumulate a set number of wishes that they'd want to have carried out by their executor, exactly like a will or a letter of wishes. And this collection of wishes will become a downloadable package, storing all this information and credentials locally, so you can physically hand someone a flash drive. When an executor believes that it's time to execute your letter of wishes, they would open this directory and run this workflow. And an execution will produce a documentation detailing what's happened on this run and the key details about it and what's worked. And this is also available on the dry runs as well. We use NAN specifically for this, which is actually what the workflow is made on. But it's great because it's open source, and it also has some already built-in capabilities to talk with a bunch of different third parties, like Discord or Mastodon or WordPress, and also allows you to make your own simple HTTP requests. So if there's a public API, then our system will be able to talk to it. But that's cool and all, but doesn't really solve the first issue that we have, which is, what do you have? What do most people own? Like, what do you own online? And what I want to develop later on is a layer that comes before any of that, kind of like a digital inventory. Because right now, most people would come to a tool like this and not really know what they have. They can't make good decisions about their digital estate if they haven't mapped it out first. They don't know where their photos actually live. They don't know which accounts hold value and which is just jargon from 2014. You should be able to have a private, local, downloadable tool that's placed on a flash drive and run from anywhere having access to really only what's necessary for that specific set of wishes. This project doesn't really aim to replace a particular service, but because there's already so much out there, but that I don't even know about. And we want it to just be a bridge that connects services together and also improve user awareness. You know, we're being really careful to design the system in a way that's scalable, so that each wish is just a building block, and we have the potential for more complex wishes and even custom user-created wishes. We're trying to prepare for the future, but obviously we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know what's possible. So it's important for us to keep this open-ended and to keep it expandable and to keep listening to what people have to say. But I think the main thing that we're trying to drive is not just an automation tool, but to prompt a conversation with yourself and with the people around you, a conversation that most people will postpone indefinitely. And we're kind of the first generation that really has to think about this seriously. And we're doing it without any previous infrastructure, knowledge, legal clarity, and cultural precedent. So yeah, it's a tough thinker.
Yeah, the question is like, what are your wishes? Yeah, that first prompt at the beginning, what would you die what would you do if you died today? It's a serious question. And it's a question that you should be having now, or should have had before, and this is a good time to do it. And as Sam said, we are a generation where so much more of our stuff is digital, and there's a lot more we could do. And the things that we're also looking at is that we could do things where we could push stuff out. So we can send emails, we can send messages, we can do those kind of things. So it's a lot more possibilities, but it's all about what your wishes are, what you want, what makes sense for you. So yeah, if you want to know more, then there's the GitHub with the code, which is what Sam's written. Thank you very much, Sam. There's a bunch of links that are about digital legacy, because there's a bunch of us that are interested in this. And please do get in touch with us. Yeah, there's a lot more that needs to be done in this space. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good work.
Thank you very much. We've got time for a couple of questions, if there are any.
So my first thought with this was, once you've done all the important stuff, you've divvied your money out, you've saved things that you want saving and everything like that, my first thought is I want this thing to trawl through my password manager and delete all my accounts. Because as you said, we've got millions of accounts online that we probably don't even use anymore, but I've got passwords for them all saved in my password manager. And there's links in the password manager to where I log into those pages. So is the facility for that?
I mean, this is what I thought as well. And I have a really clever, I think it's a clever solution to do the password, because I use KeePass, which, but one of the problems is that if you see it when you log in from another location or you haven't logged in for a while, then there's always an additional prompt, and usually it's a two-factor prompt, or it could be a pass key, and that's great. But sometimes, likes of Dropbox will go, no, we're just gonna deny you, and it then becomes a real headache. I think being able to execute this stuff from a person's machine or from the location of helps a lot. I do think that a lot of the stuff we're talking about should also be pushing the law a little bit, so the end user license agreement should allow, and it was surprising because Dropbox now allows a legacy contact. They never used to. I was actually surprised when I saw it, because there was such a scare story where they just wouldn't allow access to a person's Dropbox. But even with that, you can only pull stuff down. You can't make changes to the settings, so you can't actually delete the account, which leads to what Sam was talking about, where that data is still there, and they can still use it to train stuff. So this is something that we're interested in, is like being able to send the right kind of things to the right people or to the right machines to say, okay, we want everything deleted and gone, and we want proof of that. That kind of thing. Really interesting. Hope that answers your question. Sorry. Go. Sorry.
You pick.
Closest one.
Yeah, I'm just curious about all of your integrations. So you showed that you have like integrations with Discord, for example, but by the time a lot of people in this room die, do we even know if Discord's going to exist? And I'm just wondering how those decisions are made to implement an integration or to implement something when the longevity of that integration is questionable.
That's an issue that we were talking about quite a lot. You know, there's so much that's going to change next like decade or so that it kind of requires constant. And to be honest, it's a question that we talk about a lot and we haven't really found an answer for. We don't know how to, other than just constant improvement.
So as a declarative developer, I keep on thinking about it being like a markdown document, and then that's like where it stems from, where Sam has slightly different.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but that also I know that I can store a markdown document with a will, because I already have that. For example, so it makes it portable as well. It's with the will, so there's always different things that will happen. But I think one of the things we really wanted to do is to avoid it being trust this service.
Yeah.
The nice thing about NAM is that you could run it locally, you could trust a friend with it, or you could trust a company with it if you wanted to. So it's all like the flexibility based on what your requirements are. Sorry.
Yeah, I attended a lecture by a genealogy expert at the local library here, in fact, in central Manchester. It was a great group of people. But it was about a story about a chap who had spent massive amounts of time, years researching family history, and put it on his laptop. And the family were all looking forward to sharing that with their grandchildren, etc., when he passed away. And then the local solicitor informed the family that they could have the laptop after all the data had been deleted from it because they concerned under GDPR. Jobsworth said, no, you can't have that. I also had some experience with lots of family albums being passed on and discovered in the bottom drawer of a sock drawer. And I realized that they're no use unless someone's written on the back who's in the picture, where it was taken, when it was taken, what the event was. And so I have tried to put metadata into my digital images, but discovered that when you upload that into Google Photos, they strip most of it out. So that's not much use. So I have actually cloud shared my family album, and the family know about that I pay for the OneDrive family, what's it called, Microsoft Family 365 or something. So they all have 1 terabyte each, which I pay for, but they also can access my shared. So when I go, they'll get all the family photos, and it's got metadata written into the files. But because of what the concerns you've said about, the cloud can still, they can pull the plug. I'm now moving towards using SyncThing, which is free open source.
Yeah.
So that
I've used it as well.
My kids will have a SyncThing copy of all the family pictures and all my genealogy research from which I keep on my computer. So there won't be any risk of it being wiped because they'll have copies on theirs.
So, there's so much I want to say. I'm a bit short. So yeah, redundancy is a good idea. There are companies like we were talking to Flickr. Remember Flickr? Flickr.org, not. And they've got a service that they're deploying. What was it called? Lifeboat or something like that? Yeah. And so you can request, because one of the things about pictures in particular is that you have the pictures that you have, but you also may have, this is also other people's pictures. which are related and they tell the full story, and to be able to kind of create a creation of your pictures and their pictures, is really powerful.
Yeah, it's done in a really nicely packaged way. It's very endearing, and it tells a really good story about the photos.
Yeah, but also you send a request, and then the person sees the request, and then they go, yes, this is fine. And then I think it's called Lifeboat. It's really cleverly done. We're just waiting for them to have an API to be able to do it systematically rather than manually. There's another question, but I also wanted to bring up the question about money, because what tends to happen when you die is that your cards expire really quickly, and what there is an opportunity to do with this, at least in Caribbean culture, there's a notion that you have some money for the funeral and for those kind of costs. And so you could do something where you put aside some money in a bank account, or dare I say a crypto wallet or some kind, and it only is available once these wishes are kind of run. So it's really powerful. You could do more things like that, which most people don't think about. They think, oh, well, my credit card will last for a long time. It doesn't, trust me. Sorry, there's loads of questions, so I don't know how much time we have.
We're just at the end of the time.
Okay, well,
unfortunately.
come and see us afterwards. We'd love to show you it, and please come talk to us, because we would love to talk more about directions and all that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Very
Thank you.
interesting topic. Thank you, Ian Stein.